Hey everyone, thank you for joining us as we go through the devotional. I am reading today Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 7 through 9. And we do not know the version. It was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But it is because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations.
To 1,000 generations.
Right. So in this, I believe that the people have throughout this entire narrative from the moment they leave Egypt to now, they've just been complaining, not listening, not doing what they should be doing. They broke covenant right away. But
basically immediately.
Yeah. And yet the Lord your God is God. Let me reiterate, the faithful God,
right,
who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. So it's all the time we are constantly breaking, well, they did, and
right.
us break covenant with God.
Right.
And yet, despite that, God is faithful, and he made it just for him to keep covenant with us.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I just, it's just me, like, he, even despite, like, personally, like, I don't like sinning.
Right.
Like, none of us want to be in brokenness.
Right.
And yet there's those certain things where it's like, oh, I did it again. You know, and even with my best intention and my best heart, where I'm like, here, forward.
Right.
No more. I'm not going to give into this area of weakness in my life, you know? And I feel like God, from his purview, is like, oh, young son, I love your heart.
Right.
But he knows, like, we're falling short.
Right.
This side of the grave, you know, we're falling short the whole way as we strive to follow him. And it's just knowing, though, that he is always there, though, for when I do stumble and fall.
Right.
I turn to him.
Yeah.
And I bear out my heart to him, and I confess it to God.
Right.
And it's just instant, right away, every time. You're forgiven.
Right.
You're forgiven. You're forgiven.
Yeah.
And it's just so good to know that no matter what, I'm covered.
Right.
You know?
Right. Oh, gosh, there was something I really wanted to say. And now I don't remember what it was. But it was because you were talking about how often we fail in God's faithfulness. Oh, I've been thinking about a lot about this idea that we are not meant to be whole. Not here. Like, I shouldn't say meant. There's not an expectation that we are whole. Right. I feel like so often we think we need to come, and especially if you grew up in the church, there is so many times this expectation that you're going to come in and, you know, and you look good and you act good and you do all the right things, but you're not showing up as the real you. And this is where this, like, God being weak in God's strength is so important, because when we recognize Jesus came to make you whole. Jesus came to be the piece that is missing within you. Like, whatever you need to be made whole, Jesus came to be that thing for you. And so you don't have to show up with perfection.
Yeah.
You can show up in your brokenness. You can show up and have sinned and still show up to God, because God came to be this piece. He came to make us complete. Like, he makes us complete. We don't have to make ourselves complete. That doesn't mean that we're not striving towards wholeness, right? But that's that tension of living in grace and understanding God's grace, and yet always striving to, like, I love that in the We the Kingdom and the song, everyone loves that song. It was really popular.
Oh, yes.
But it says like, she's talking about like God's love and God's grace, and that like it makes her want to be good. Like understanding God's full love and understanding his full grace. It's like he's the best leader. Like if you've ever had a really good coach or a really good teacher, or maybe your parent is like this, maybe, you know, you have a really like whole parent. And it's like you want to show your best self for that person.
Right.
Because they're showing up their best self, and there's just like this desire to rise to what they have. And it's like that's what God is. Like God is that like wholeness that we can feel this desire to rise towards, but yet knowing that no matter how many times we fail, he's caught us.
Yeah.
You know? And I think it's actually, in even looking back at Hosea, it's actually comforting to look at the people of Israel, to look at the Bible. Yeah. Like I remember my dad saying one time that he was like, you know, if I wrote like my own biography or something, right? Yeah. Like I would leave out a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And yet the Bible just shows it all.
Right.
It bears all.
It's real.
Yes, because we need to see that, because we need to know, like, if Israel failed over and over again, immediately after seeing amazing miracles, they came out of Egypt immediately like, you should have just sent us back.
Yeah.
It's like, we love hiking and we take our kids on hikes all the time. And especially, I mean, all of them have done this, but especially our youngest right now. I don't even know if we're like
10 feet.
10 feet. Yeah, 10 feet from the car. And I need uppies. I can't walk. And I'm like, here's Israel.
Yeah.
Walking on. Yeah. Send us back. But the point being, it's funny to laugh, but of course we would have been the same way. But it's comforting because it's like, even here it says, God keeps his covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments 1,000 generations. And I feel like you could feel his pressure from that.
Yeah.
And yet it's like, no, because his people didn't.
Right.
But his steadfastness
does. Yeah.
You know, he keeps his covenant in mind. Yeah. Even if we don't. All right. So that's Deuteronomy 7 through 9. And there are discussion questions that you can answer. All right. Thanks for joining us.